If we take the collapse of the houses in Church Street in September 1913, it was a crisis or a disaster waiting to happen. It's absolutely no surprise to anybody who knows anything in 1913 in Dublin. It could have been any of several hundred other houses. It just happens to be those two. You can track the tenement houses on Church Street over several years. I think it's number 60 is a tenement by the 1860s. I think it's number 62 is a tenement by the 1870s. But the two houses that collapsed are in tenements for 30, 40 at least years beforehand. And that's very, very typical. We do know from the inquiry afterwards that that house had been subjected to multiple inspections, both those houses, which is pretty typical. And this was the implementation of the 1878 Public Health Act for Ireland. And that gave the corporation powers of inspection. They could close down houses that were, condemn them as unfit for human habitation, and they could require people, the owners of the house, to put the house into fit state for occupation, and they could impose fines. These were their 1 shilling fines. So we know from 1879 onwards, we have the corporation listing of all the houses it condemned and closed and the inspections that it carried out. And Church Street features on that pretty typically. But it wasn't a condemned house at the time it collapsed. They had simply noted things that had to be rectified in it, which according to the owner of the house, a very modest woman, had been rectified. I suppose the importance of the collapse, firstly a human tragedy, and the response to that was an outpouring of sympathy, but there was a very serious response to it because this demonstrated that the question of the city slums, the tenement house issue, which had been written about, surveyed, reported on, debated on, publicised for 30, 40 years up to that, with exactly the same arguments being rehearsed, that at this point you couldn't just talk about it. You had to have action. The Church Street collapse was a turning point in the history of housing in Dublin.